All right, we're going to do the international trade stuff first. So this is going to be pretty boring, but you're going to hear stuff that you're going to hear the rest of your life. This won't take real long. We'll get through it pretty quick. All right, we did specialization in economics already, but like, all right, say a country. This is great. Let's say Canada. Yeah, Canada. This is going to be, specialization. Canada, let's say people like bananas. You can't grow bananas in Canada because of the climate. So they can make syrup. You got maple trees. It's better for them to specialize in making syrup or whatever it is they're good at, and then buy bananas from somebody else than it is for them to try to grow bananas. So they can specialize in what they're good at, like making syrup, if they have a climate for that, or logging, trees and wood and stuff. And then instead of trying to grow bananas, they can specialize in what they're good at. So specialization where the country, it's cheaper and more economically viable for them to do what they're good at and what they're able to do, and purchase the things that they're not able to get, like bananas, if that makes sense. Economic interdependence, not independence, interdependence. Our countries are all connected. You got the US, you got China, you got England, and you've got Saudi Arabia, okay? Every one of these countries has got things that the others want. They're all connected. All the countries of the world, for the most part, are interdependent with each other. They all are dependent on other countries doing things and buying things and producing things for their economies to be strong. So the United States can't be completely independent from the rest of the world. We're dependent on other countries to provide goods or to buy our stuff. That's economic interdependence. We're connected to all these other. And if something happens over here or something happens over here, it's going to affect this country, and then it's going to affect this country. So we're all connected. Now, absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Let's say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Some of y'all don't know who that is. He was like 7'3". He was a really good basketball player. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's 7'3". He has an absolute advantage over me in playing basketball. He's 7'3". I can't become 7'3". I can't work harder and become 7'3". He just is 7'3", so he has an absolute advantage over me. Countries have absolute advantages over others. Used bananas earlier. Costa Rica has the climate for growing bananas. Bananas grow really good down in Costa Rica, so they have an absolute advantage over other countries, over Canada, when it comes to growing bananas. Canada can't grow bananas, Costa Rica can. Costa Rica has an absolute advantage over the other country, over Canada. It's not something you did, it's not something you worked at, it's just something you are, it's just something you have. If you want to open a spring water company and you have a spring, you have an absolute advantage over someone that doesn't have a spring. Now, a comparative advantage is something you can control. China has a comparative advantage over the United States because we have human rights. Therefore, we cannot hire 12-year-olds to work in the sweatshop for 25 cents an hour. China can. They don't have human rights. So their costs to produce things are way lower than ours are. They have a comparative advantage over us when it comes to producing stuff and manufacturing because of how they treat people. We choose not to do what they choose to do. So China has a comparative advantage over us. This is something you choose. Okay? Trade barriers. Trade barriers is any law or policy that a country has. Any law or policy. Any law or policy a country might have that blocks trade or limits trade or affects trade. We got some examples here. We got three types. All right, quotas. We've talked about quotas back in the past. A quota is a maximum or a minimum amount. It's either a maximum or a minimum. In this case, when it comes to imports, a country might impose a maximum quota, a maximum number of TVs they're going to allow from Japan, or tons of steel they're going to allow from China. It's limiting what can come into the country. And once that quota is met, there's no more imports of that particular product or that particular stuff. Tariffs are something we've talked about. They aren't as big a deal now as they used to be. Tariffs is a tax on imports. You charge other countries money to bring their stuff into your country. There's two types. One is revenue. Revenue means to bring in money. Up until the early 1900s, tariffs is how American government made money. That's where that was their revenue source. This isn't around too much anymore. If you use tariffs, if a government uses tariffs to make revenue, it's a revenue tariff. Those aren't around too much. The other kind are protectionists, or protective. You're protecting domestic products. Domestic means inside the country. So stuff made inside the country, domestic goods and foreign goods. Protective tariffs try to add weight or add cost to foreign goods to benefit domestic goods, to benefit stuff made inside the country. Those are the tariffs that exist today, to protect your country's products. And the last trade barrier countries put up, embargoes. Embargo is when you say, we are not buying your country's stuff, or we're not selling stuff to you. That's an embargo. If we don't like something you're doing, or you're an enemy of ours, we say, we're not buying your stuff. We're not selling you our stuff. That's an embargo. It could be called a sanction, economic sanction. We've talked about that before. That's an embargo. Now, the impacts of trade barriers. if you're limiting products coming in, you're limiting competition. When you limit competition, you're increasing prices. I'm not saying this is wrong or evil, and I can't spell. You're going to increase prices because you're putting a limit on competition. None of my pens work. I'm going to do something for me. Buy me some pens. I think I'll buy some pens sometime. All right. South Korea. What was the story I saw? South Korea subsidized. I can't spell. Remember, we're subsidizing, and that's spelled wrong. The government gave money to an industry. I forget what it was. This isn't it, but maybe they gave money to the phone making industry so they could sell their products for cheaper and still make a profit. That raised the prices for, if they did that, that would raise the prices. The phone prices would be artificially inflated because the company could have made it for this. But anyway, I'm sorry, I can't remember what I was thinking. Sorry about that. I'm old. Think about it. It raises prices. It also could produce trade wars where countries might, how can I think of this? Let me see, there was something in here. Give me a second. There's an example in here I thought was pretty good. How you guys doing today? I'm either eating a breakfast taco right now from One in a Million, or looking at something or eating something. I bet I'm eating something. Might be working out. Okay, yeah, this is good. Trade wars often occur when nations disagree on quotas or tariffs. So if some country imposes a tariff or a quota, this country might get mad. One recent trade war, however, came about in 1999 when the European Union banned the importation of hormone-treated U.S. beef. Many U.S. ranchers treat their cattle with hormones, which cause the animals to develop muscle faster than untreated animals. But EU scientists, citing health concerns, helped push through a ban. In response, the United States levied a 100% tariff on a range of EU products, including ham, onions, mustard, chocolate, and cheese. So if this country does something that I don't like, if they impose an embargo on me, okay, if there's an embargo placed on me, on my country, then I'm going to do something in retaliation to them. I might put a tariff on them. I might ban some of their goods. And that in turn is going to cause the cost to go up, the prices of these items to go up. And the consumer gets hurt. Once again, I'm not saying this is wrong or bad, but we'll see. All right, protectionism. Protectionism is you're trying to protect domestic products. Remember, domestic products is stuff made within your country. And you protect, like we said, you protect your products through quotas, maybe embargoes, or tariffs. You'll use trade barriers to protect, if I don't know if that helps too much. It limits competition. It makes it worse for consumers. If I protect my kid from any kind of adversity, then when they get old, they won't be able to handle it. It's not exactly the same thing. But like we see, if this country imposes an embargo, then this country might do something back here, and then the people buying stuff, the ones that suffer from that. We might use trade barriers to protect these products. We might try to protect jobs, domestic jobs. Also, we might be trying to, and they'll call this a fancy word, infant industries. If there is a company or a technology that you've just developed, you might want to protect that and let it grow strong enough before you allow it to compete with other things. But that's why you use trade barriers, or you try to protect your country's products and jobs and economy. All right, now to something I know nothing about. Foreign exchange rates. Okay? You got the dollar. And you've got the, let's say the pound. Okay, this is England's money, is the pound. We got the dollar. To complicate things, you've got the British pound, and you also have the euro, because they're a part of the European Union, and the currency of the European Union is the euro. So we got 3 different currencies here, 2 going on in England, 1 going on in America. They're in competition with each other. They don't have the same value. In powerlifting, if you weigh 162 pounds, you're going to compete with other people within about 10, 15 pounds of you. You're not competing against a 132-pound guy or a 220-pound guy. In currency, in exchange rates, everybody's competing against everybody. Nothing's the same weight. It's all different, and you're all competing against each other. The foreign exchange rate is what the dollar will buy in England, or what the pound will buy in the United States. There are some years where the dollar will buy more in England, where the dollar versus the pound is doing good. There's some years where the dollar versus the pound is not doing good. I can look at it and say, okay, that makes sense, but I can't explain that. It just blows my mind if I think too much about it. But they're in competition with each other. Now, if the dollar weakens, if the value of the dollar worldwide versus other currencies drops, if the dollar can't buy as much, then in England, products that we buy from England, okay, if we're buying products from England, the price can stay the same, but if the value of the value of the dollar drops, these things get more expensive because the dollar can't buy as much in British pounds as they used to. So let's say last year the dollar could buy 3.5 pounds, not pounds weight, but money-wise, 3.5 pounds worth of stuff in England. But this year, the dollar buys 3 pounds. No, what am I thinking? Oh, yeah, 3 pounds worth of stuff. This stuff just got more expensive without getting more expensive. But if the dollar buys more, say the dollar buys 4 pounds worth of stuff. Now, this thing just got cheaper without getting cheaper. I hope that kind of makes sense. But the exchange rate of the dollar versus other currencies affects trade because it can make things more expensive without them being more expensive. It can make things cheaper without them being cheaper, based on what the value of the dollar is doing, if it's going up or down. if that makes sense. No, I don't think it works. All right, last couple things, and then we're gonna do like 10 more questions, and we're done. You're done for good in here. All right, the balance of trade. In America, all right, let's say your store. If you own a store, if you own a business, you want more money coming in than you are paying out. You want to make a profit. If you own a business, you want more money coming in the door than you're paying out the door. You don't want to pay your employees or your suppliers more than what your customers are paying you. You want to make a profit. So as a country, you don't want to have more imports coming in than you have exports going out. Balance of trade is you at least have those balanced, where the amount of imports coming in is the same as your exports. You really would rather have more exports going out than imports coming in. That's the balance of trade, where an imbalance would be you got more imports coming in, less exports going out. You want that to be balanced or tipped to your favor. Now, you'll be mad at me for this. That's okay. I'll live. One thing I want you to know, you'll hear this every once in a while, and I never really understood what it was. There's something called a GATT. After World War II, this thing, it was like a treaty thing that was put together. It was the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Countries got together and agreed, look, we're going to try to limit the amount of trade wars we get into, embargoes, tariffs. We're going to get together and agree to some of this so we can have more trade. I'm able to sell my stuff, you're able to sell your stuff, everybody's happy. Limit the trade wars. That's what GATT attempted to do. In 1995, we talked about the World Trade Organization. They kind of took this over. And like we said earlier, this is all about expanding trade. Strengthening economies all over the world. If you own a store in a city, you don't want the factory to close down, because if the factory closed down, people can't buy your stuff. You don't want this country's economy to collapse, because then they can't buy your stuff. So the World Trade Organization works to strengthen economies around the world, and that in turn strengthens all the economies. They try to stimulate trade among countries. GATT's the old thing, the World Trade Organization is the new thing. And it's all about trade, limiting trade wars, opening up trade between countries, more trade, more competition, more buying, more selling. All right, that was done. Last thing, last new thing we'll ever do in this room. I know y'all are sad. Told you, there's a fat guy up here earlier told you this was going to happen, and y'all thought he was a liar. So this is review. The economic indicators. Right? An economic indicator is like the Dow Jones average is an indicator of what the stock market's doing. So number one on economic indicators. If you haven't passed them out by now, I'll let you get them. Everybody get your papers out. Economic indicators. GDP. Gross done this before. The gross domestic product is you add up all the value of all the manufactured goods in a country in a year. Domestic means in the country in a given year. So any car that was made in 2020, any house that was built in 2020, any clothes that were made, any product that was produced in 2020, the value of all that goes in the gross domestic product. If the gross domestic product goes up, things are pretty good because people are not going to manufacture things they can't sell. If they're not selling it, they limit their production. If the gross domestic product is dropping, the GDP is dropping, that means the economy is messing up. People aren't buying stuff. So that's an indicator of how the economy is doing. The gross domestic product. It has to be produced in the country. Can't be foreign goods. What I don't know is, okay, Ford trucks. If it's made in Mexico, I don't think that would be a part of the gross domestic product. But maybe there's a part that was made in Mexico, but the truck is built in America. The truck should be on the American GDP. I don't know all that. Go to college and learn all that. I don't know that part. It's made in a country within a given year. Okay? One more I'm not thinking of. What is that? One second. I don't know. Okay. If I had to make clothes, this shirt was made this year. I'm going to say this shirt was made this year. It has to be final, right? They might have made the fabric. They might have made the cloth, but didn't make the shirt. It would not be a part of the GDP if it was not final. Okay? But these are the big things. In a country, in a year. All right, a recession. A recession is a slowdown in economic activity. I think it's 6 months. Okay, let me make sure. I think it's 6 months. I'm going to say it's 6 months is an official recession. You hear about recessions every once in a while. Recession. Come on, garbage. Over. Give me a break. You're kidding me. Oh yeah, I look like an idiot here. Y'all are loving this. Recession. QRS. Recession. Okay, yes. Okay. For 2 quarters or 6 months, a recession is when the GDP or the economy drops for 2 quarters or 6 months. 2 quarters is 3 months. So if the economy drops, if the economy loses value for 6 consecutive months, that is in a recession. that is now a recession. When the economy drops, the value of the economy, the GDP, drops for 2 quarters, 6 consecutive months, we're in a recession. A depression has no definition. A depression is called a depression after the fact. A depression is a prolonged recession. Always heard a recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose your job. So you don't call it a depression while it's going on. It's a depression after the fact. Historians will go back. If it's been 2 years, it's depression. If it's been 1 year, it's depression. But if you have a job, everything's good. If you lose your job, it's bad. All right, the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate attempts, obviously, to figure out what percent of people are unemployed. So, if the unemployment rate is dropping, think about this. The unemployment rate is dropping. Is that good or bad? If it's dropping, less people are unemployed. So that's a good thing. If it's going up, less people have jobs. So that's bad. Now, the unemployment rate is not accurate. The unemployment rate put out by the government is not accurate because it only measures people that are actively looking for work. If you're not actively looking for work, you're not factored into these are only people looking for work. These are only the unemployed people that are applying for unemployment or who are actively searching for jobs. It does not count underemployed people. Okay, my oldest kid's graduating this month from college. He's had some interviews. He doesn't have a job yet. He wants to coach and teach. If he got a job fixing fence, if he couldn't find a teaching job, he got a job fixing fence. Nothing wrong with that. That's work. It's honest work. He has a college degree, and he's getting a certificate for teaching and coaching. His job, it's not beneath it, but it's less than what he's trained for. Underemployed means you are working and you have a job, but it's not what you trained for. If I got fired and I went to work for the highway department, paving streets, I would be underemployed. So the unemployment rate does not factor underemployed in. So if you're, if you're a PhD, if you're a doctor, not PhD, if you're a doctor, a medical doctor, and you are working at McDonald's, you're underemployed. All right. The poverty rate. The poverty rate is a salary number, an income number. I don't know, I don't remember what exactly it is, but it's a number, say it's $18,000 a year. And if somebody makes less than $18,000 a year, or maybe a couple, or I don't know, if you're below this level, you're considered below the poverty rate. So whatever that salary number is, whatever that income number is, you're below the poverty rate. If the number of people below the poverty rate, Godzilla. Okay. If the number of people below the poverty rate is going up, that's an indicator something's wrong in our economy. If it is dropping, if the number of people below the poverty rate is dropping, that's a good thing for our economy. That indicates things are going good. Okay, welfare. Welfare, there is a definition, but for most, generally it's government help for people who are struggling. It's meant to be a boost for people having a hard time. Welfare helps our country because it gives people a chance to get up and do and and maybe they're struggling through something. The problem with welfare is when it's abused, is when it is cheated, when people are on there that don't need to be on there, and they create a dependence on the government. If you can't do, we need to help you. If you can do, you need to do. But it does benefit us to help people, just like it benefits our economy to help this country's economy over here, strengthen them so they can buy and sell with us. It helps to strengthen your neighbor's economy so they can get out there and produce and do things. But the abuse is what's bad. I told you a long time ago, when little Christy was pregnant with Colt, she was working at the pharmacy and she would see people come up with fake nails and brand new car keys, and they'd be using government assistance to buy their prescriptions. And so she called the office to see what it would take for her to get on whatever, welfare, whatever you want to say. And they said, if you'll quit your job, you could do it. That's the problem. Welfare is not the problem. The way it's abused is the problem. All right, inflation. Inflation is something I've heard all my life. And it's easier for me to explain to you, but it might be hard for you to completely understand. Inflation is when the price of things, the price of stuff is rising faster than wages are rising. If the cost of goods are going up at a faster rate than wages are going up, that creates inflation. It means prices for everything are higher and you can't afford what you could afford last month or the month before. One of the causes of inflation, I've been told, is low interest rates. I've heard this for quite a while. So if prolonged low interest rates can create inflation, we've had prolonged low interest rates for a while. But it's not good. In the 70s, inflation was horrific. A little bit of inflation might happen, it's okay. I told that, gas prices doubled in the mid-70s, and it was just, the economy was a wreck. And I've heard predictions that we're heading for a lot of inflation this summer. Gas prices are going up because there's not enough tank truck drivers. There's a bunch of empty tank trucks. We'll have gasoline, we just won't have the ability to haul it around. Good news. By the Consumer Price Index. You hear this every once in a while in the news. You've heard of it, you don't realize it. You'll hear it every once in a while. You gotta be listening for it. The Consumer Price Index is, they take everyday items. They'll take a combination of everyday items that everybody gets. Shampoo, soap, milk, bread, bleach, and they'll look at what's happening with the price of those. Everyday items everybody buys, the Consumer Price Index is going up. That's not good. If it's coming down, it means it's easier to buy stuff. So you'll hear Consumer Price Index every once in a while. It's stuff everybody buys. Haven't heard it in a while, but I haven't been listening for it. All right. Last two things. Per capita GDP. Per capita means per person. So the per capita GDP would be the GDP divided by the population. If you have let's say you have teams of 5 people, and these 5 people lift, say they're squatting, and these 5 people lift 2,000 pounds. So individually, their squats add up to 2,000. That means all these 5 people are averaging 400 pounds a person. Those are 5 pretty strong people. If this team of 5 is averaging, let's say their weight is 1,500. That means they're only squatting 300 each. So if a country is really, this is a way to look and see, it's more detailed. If there's a small country and their GDP is really big, that really means they're stronger. They're doing more per person. So it's a more effective indicator than just GDP. America, we have 300 million people. If Costa Rica's GDP is the same as ours, per capita, looks a lot better. And last, capital flight. The word capital, not capital like the capital of a country, but capital like money. All right. Capital flight. That word flight means capital is leaving the country. People are investing their money somewhere else. Like in America, if there's capital flight, that means they're not putting their money into American business, domestic businesses, domestic companies. They're putting it into foreign companies. That's not a good sign. If you're not investing in your country, you're investing in companies from other countries, that's a bad sign. So, there we go. Y'all are done. Relax. Don't cause Miss Allen any trouble. And the bad news is I'll be back next week. So, hope y'all have a great weekend. See y'all.